Good morning, everyone. This is Pastor Barbara coming to you from Hamilton, Ontario. I'm currently serving at Linden Park Community United Church here on the mountain. And I am so excited today to interview and to introduce you to Ann Forbeck, who is the clerk of session at the church. Welcome, Ann.
Well, thank you very much, Pastor Barb. It's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, just maybe give me a little bit of background. How long have you been at Linden Park?
So my mom and dad were part of the group that founded Linden Park. So my whole life has been spent at Linden Park. I literally grew up with a Linden Park family as well as my own personal family. So all my life.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for taking time out of your busy family time today to do this during March
My
break.
pleasure.
So, just a couple of questions for discussion. As we're in the season of Lent, do you have any thoughts about what Lent means to you?
Well, when I was a child, Lent was certainly something that was familiar in terms of going to church. We had Lenten projects, whatever they might have been for the church or for Sunday school, and always setting aside coins and so on. We knew what the purpose was to be helpful to others. I remember you and Reverend Montgomery, you were both talking about those little leather pamphlets and they had spaces for the coins. I remember doing the same thing. We always set the coins aside for Lent and it wasn't really until, as you age, Lent takes on different meanings, different significances.
Mhm.
And, um, for me as a child, Christmas was always the high season because that was the most exciting as a child. And then I still felt Christmas was the most important because it was the birth of Christ. And without the birth of Christ, nothing else would happen. And then as I got a little bit older and understood then more of the significance of why Christ was born and why Easter then was very much the high season for most Christians. And I would say it is now for me too. The sacrifices that Christ made, those 40 days and 40 nights, we know that we can have water. We know that if we really, really needed to, or if we were ill, we could go to the fridge. We could get something to eat to tide us over. We would have access to medical aid. Christ did not. And so that kind of sacrifice during the 40 days of Lent is quite significant.
Mhm. So true. So true. Um, when we think of Lent, and we often think of giving something up for Lent, what are your thoughts on fasting for Lent? And what, if anything, have you given up or fasted from?
Um, Fasting, I'm going to revert back to childhood again. Fasting, Good Friday was a fast day. Then you had fish on Friday,
Right.
certainly for Good Friday in particular. But um, I've been really blessed. And one of the opportunities I've had was to be um, in Israel, and it was at Christmas time. But to walk along the Via Dolorosa and to sit down to a fish dinner, and it was St. Peter's fish, is what they call it there, and to just feel as though you're totally surrounded by everything that I learned in my childhood and in my youth during catechism classes, confirmation classes, and just literally came to life. And you watched how people set aside time. I'm an English second language teacher, so I have a fuller appreciation, not a full, but a fuller appreciation for our Muslim families that fast during Ramadan,
Hmm.
the 30-day fast. And yes, they eat when it's dark. They have access to food. But during the course of the workday and the school day, they're giving up everything that gives them the energy, that gives them the ability to stay focused. And yet they're at school. Sometimes they're doing provincial testing and so on. And I admire their conviction to be able to fast, to be able to um, change their whole routines, to be fully upset. And I think, boy, if a little child from grade one up can do that, well, certainly I should be able to do that for a day, for a couple, for a weekend, for anything along that line. And then having seen the children and the youth and adults in Kenya, they do what's called a kesha, and that would be overnight prayers. And so they pray all day, all night. They would do it all week. And sometimes we would have to shut it down and get the children to stop so that they would have some nourishment after a weekend's time, because we knew they were going to school and they needed that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, wow, a child can teach us so much. So I wish I had the strength of that willpower. I do on occasion, but certainly not as they do. And I wonder if that were something that I had grown up with, would I have done that more willingly, more frequently? Would that be, that um, muscle retention of, okay, this is what we do, this is how it is, this is what we're going to do. Yes, I'll give up certain foods, or I try to give up certain behaviors, or I try and think differently, more positively, or spend more time with God. So it varies. It's not always the same for me year to year,
Mm-hmm.
but that spending more time, you've you've created these Lenten um, devotionals each day. Just that in itself for me is wonderful, because it gives me that time frame to read the scripture, to focus on what words you've shared, to take that a little bit further, maybe to open up that Bible and go deeper into the passages pre and post. And I'm really grateful for that this Lent. So thank you for doing that, because it's something to look forward to, but it also gives me the opportunity to just focus and zero in on the word and its messages.
Thank you for that. I realized once I got started, and now we're not quite at the halfway mark. Just what a task I took on there. It's a lot more than I thought it would be, and yet when I finally do take the time and I sit down at the computer to compose whatever I'm sending out, the spirit just feeds it to me, and I'm allowed the energy to do that. But I'm glad that it is helpful for you and that it allows you that space as well. For me, that specific act is one of giving, because that's also part of what we do during Lent is giving. And when like the Muslim people fast for Ramadan, they're also expected to give, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
part of that tradition. And in many ways it is with us at church, right? We're giving to
Mm-hmm.
the Red Cross for Ukrainian relief right now, or we're gathering for that. The bread that's going out is gathering money for mission and service. So there's this
Yeah.
idea of giving. The difference with the bread is that you're getting something in return.
True.
But the
True.
giving for the Red Cross is not getting something in return, except that you are giving from the Spirit of God for the best use of somebody else.
Yeah.
So I appreciate those little nuances, and of course we don't have the little cards with the slots for the coins anymore like we did as children. But that doesn't mean we can't do it. And I know at a church I served previously, they gave out, actually, I have one here, I think. This is what my test strips come
Right.
in, but a number of the test strips come in much larger bottles, and they would fit a quarter. So a
Right.
lady who is diabetic handed out a whole bunch of those, and we filled those up for Lent that year. But always, it's not just about giving something up, but what are you replacing that with, right? Yeah. So you're replacing it with good deeds, or you're replacing it with something else from your heart. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. And I think that's one reason, as I mentioned, all the time growing up, um, there were children that we sponsored, and we would have a little, almost like a plaster of Paris birthday cake, and it was a good sized cake, and it had the slot in it. And every time you had every anyone had a birthday,
Yeah.
and the Sunday school, you put your coins in for the number of years that those coins represented, and so on.
Oh,
But
wow.
Lent was always a time where we gave to Sandy. Sandy was the young girl in India, and our church adopted her. And
Hmm.
so Lent was the time to really give. And then we had the wonderful mission that Ken Dryden and his wife started, and Ken Dryden Sr. started, Murray Dryden, sorry, started. And that was a wonderful mission where it was sleeping children around the world,
Yes,
where
I
they
remember
went,
that.
right? They went into the various countries, they used their materials and so on. They taught the people, they found the tailors and the seamstresses and so on, and had people looking out for the children and the youth that needed those sleeping bags, and the clothing that was made by the local people and so on. And then eventually, when socks kind of came to the forefront, we literally used a sock to collect our coins in during
Hmm.
Lent. And as you said, you know, taking of what we have and setting it aside. And no, we don't necessarily have something tangible to hold on to, like the bread that you're doing for mission and service, but we have the tangibility of the knowledge that it is going to be helpful to others. And we
Exactly.
put trust that whoever receives is going to use it as it's meant for. We're
Exactly.
putting trust that the Red Cross will put it to to wherever it is most needed, and the needs are so great. I don't know how they make those decisions. And for socks, we know that 100% goes to
Yeah.
supporting the children and the vulnerable in Kenya.
So, can you, for those who may watch this who don't know what SOX is, explain the acronym, please?
Okay, certainly. So SOCKS, SOCKS, stands for Support Orphan Children Kenyan Schools. And so SOCKS is just a grassroots charity. Sonia Sanoski was very much a part of that, and you know who Sonia is and her family, and very much supported the growth of SOCKS, as did her family, and being able to support children mostly in education. But during COVID,
Mhm.
that changed quite a bit. That varied. There were children that were unable, but feeding them, making sure that they had access to medical aid when it was
Mhm.
necessary. But yeah, so there are about 4 agencies that we support in Kenya right now, all children oriented. One is a feeding program at a school in the largest slum within Nairobi, which is the largest in Kenya, and others are a baby mission called Mission in Action. Another is in Kisumu, which is right near Lake Victoria, so it's as far west as you can be, and it's a school for the mentally and physically handicapped children. It's called Joyland Special Needs School, and so on. And so it's just knowing that we are blessed to be able to give 100% of what comes
Mhm.
to us to those organizations and to help. And then we have a garden program too. So that's where the rest goes. So grandmothers that have been widowed but are looking after maybe 5, 6, 9 children. Now they have their own garden where they can harvest,
Wow.
and they've got enough sustainable food to feed their families without having to go beyond, or they can
Hmm.
harvest and exchange and so on.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, as I put my coins in my sock, then I can also pray for the organization and lift that up and all of those children and the people that support them. as well as I continue in prayer. So thank you for sharing that
Thank you.
with us. And
You're
thank you today for taking time out of the busyness that we can have during March break. The weather's been wonderful and it's so good to spend time with
welcome.
family. And I know you're helpful in and through the community of faith. There's always a need for people who can take over some leadership and to just step in when there is a need. So I know you're one of those kinds of people. So thank you for
Yeah.
continuing to do that. And
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. May your Lenten experience continue to fill you with the Holy Spirit as we head towards Calvary and Resurrection Sunday. So God bless.
Uh,
Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Pastor Barb. God bless